So we have highly talented musicians that are really capable of performing music that is entertaining. But I know, just from talking to them and from watching them and from the experience, that joining them in the music is at a level that you don't normally do when you get entertained. That's what we're about here, because music has this way of the one thing that I believe that human beings are capable of that has almost no, that creates almost no suffering, is music. Of the thing that we can create that does not produce suffering is music. And one of the things, one of our core values we talked about last week was the idea that the freedom from suffering is a major value of ours. So when we have them here, what I just want us to do is I really want to encourage people to participate in the music by standing up, by clapping, by singing with them, by doing all those things, because I think it is that participation that moves the music one step further into the spiritual experience that we really wanted to be for ourselves and for all of us. So, and we have the people here, the talent here, capable of really making that experience work for us. So just give them a hand. So thank you. So we're continuing. I'm doing a series of talks on our core values. We talked about spiritual awakening as the first one. Last week we talked about freedom from suffering, one of the core values that actually really comes out of Buddhism as well as Christianity. And today we're going to talk about integrity as one of the core values. And as I think about that, I think about integrity as being maybe challenging. Can it not be? Sometimes, I don't know, but nobody will admit to it except but it's challenging for me sometimes. I can tell you that, and has been in my life. But integrity means in the concept that we're going to use it here is actually being true to oneself. And so that is being true to oneself. You would kind of have to know who you are in order for that to happen, right? I mean, if I don't know who I am, I don't know how exactly to be true to myself. I can be true to myself to concepts of who I am, but I have had a lot of different concepts to who I am. I've had a lot of different states of being, states of mind, from severe depression and being locked up for that. This is a long time ago. It hasn't been, I haven't been locked up for the last 48 hours at least. but it was really a long time ago. But I know that those kinds of frame of minds, what they can be. And one of the things I know about that is that I can identify emotionally and psychologically with concepts of self as being the truth of who I am. I'm capable of doing that, plus or minus. Some of them are good concepts of self, some of them are not so good. And I am capable emotionally and psychologically to identify with them. And one of the things that I have discovered, that's been taught to me on the spiritual journey, is the ability and the capacity and the benefit of detaching from those perspectives about who I am that are limiting and that appear to be true, but really may not be true. And I can see that happening. You can see that's actually part of the whole process of growing. So what I have done in the context of trying to live in integrity and trying to be true to myself, oftentimes it calls me to actually detach from how I see myself at the moment. Because sometimes I see myself as, having this problem or that problem, or identifying with whatever I'm lacking and that kind of thing like that. So being in integrity and being true to myself sometimes calls me to detach from myself and to awaken to and to really who I am. And so what it is called me to do, and what I still have challenges, and I've been doing this for a long time, fairly long time, and I still have challenges related to always being fully conscious and aware of the fact that the presence of God is the very essence of my being. The essence of who I am is 100% good. The essence of who I am is absolutely I cannot be a failure. The essence of who I am is this creative divine presence of God. And it is still very difficult for me to do it, but when I am doing that, I am being true to myself. And in the context of doing that, even though the current circumstances may not look like I am a divinely guided, wise expression of spirit, the circumstances may not look like that. The appearance is only that much. It's only appearance. It is not necessarily the truth. And so that's the area that I am really engaged in. That is to be growing. So I think that living in integrity and living in spiritual integrity is really based on the idea that I am a growing human being and I'm an ever-changing human being. And it is for me, and one of the things I recommend for most of the people that I work for, it is based on a concept that my job is to have taken on human nature as it presently exists. And some of you have heard me say this before. My job is to take on aspects of human nature, the way they presently are, with the purpose of first accepting them and then transcending or transforming those aspects of human nature. And when I am engaged in the activity of doing that, I am engaged in moving myself and in the shared concept of shared spiritual awakening, supporting other people moving forward on an evolutionary path to conscious awareness of our oneness with God. So in the context of being true to myself is even though in this whole process I'm not perfect, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In the context of doing that, I'm not perfect, but by God, I'm pretty real most of the time. You know, I usually try to be who I am. And sometimes, you know, it's just like when Spirit spoke to me and said, "You're going to be a unity minister someday," the first thought that went off in my mind is, and I won't say exactly how it went off in my mind, but the first thought that went off in my mind is I say the F word way too much to ever be considered a minister of any kind at all, you know. And in the context of that, I was trying to be as authentic with myself, and I still try to do that. And sometimes, you know, it shows up. I either can be authentic with myself or I can try to be the minister and try to be what I think you think ministers should be. You know, so I try to please you and do what I think you should do, and then you'll give money on Sunday and pay my salary and all that kind of stuff like that. All those good things will happen. But that's really not the best that I can do. And today I really know. Today I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid that you will misunderstand me if I'm authentic. I'm not afraid of that any longer. I've lost some of that fear. And so I try to be as real as I can from the podium and show who I am. But I would propose to you that's the same for you. And the thing that makes that okay, and the thing that makes it okay for me to be vulnerable and not be perfect, the thing that makes that okay is this thing that I believe with all my heart, that I, as well as you and all of us, have taken on human nature as it presently exists, for the purpose of accepting it and transforming and transcending it. And that's for me to be able to honestly share my experience with you, and then it opens the door for you to share your experience with me and share your experience with other people. And out of that comes the fulfillment of our mission and our vision about shared spiritual awakening. About that, out of it comes human beings moving into the direction that the future of humanity is probably dependent upon. And that is the transformation, the movement from a human culture, a human experience dominated largely by the human ego, as which it is in our world, in our culture, to a human experience, a world dominated by the shared spiritual awakening of human beings, so that we know who we are, so that I can be present. Today I try to live, I don't live every way perfectly. What I do is really evaluate how my actions and thoughts and anything that I do, does it increase suffering, or has it the potential at least not to increase suffering, and maybe even reduce suffering for myself and for others. And I ask myself that a lot of time, because foundational to my beliefs, right at the very cornerstone of the foundation of my beliefs, is this idea that the reduction of suffering is really what spirit is about. As we awaken to that, as we begin to use our imagination, fired up by this presence of spirit, as we open ourselves to the experience of it, fired up to it, we are able to create, visions of really expanding good, in the sense of how there is a presence in us that wants this good to be expressed through us and as us in our relationships with each other. And in that, in the context of doing that, actually reduce suffering, reduce fear, and all those things that are associated with that. So that's what we're about. So really what I'm about is being true to my spiritual growth. There has been Charles Fillmore. It said one time, in Charles Fillmore, much of the teachings that he did, and much of the inspiration that came about at a time before the experience in which science has proved that evolution is the process by which human beings showed up on this planet. We showed up through an evolutionary process that is the creative activity of God expressing itself in every way across this planet, in millions of different extraordinary, oftentimes just extraordinary, beautiful ways, and awe-inspiring. Have you ever watched Birds of Paradise? Have you ever seen any of the documentaries that show about birds of paradise, about how they mate with each other, what they do? I mean, it is just the beauty and the spectacular kinds of things that happen in nature. Just, it just can't be an accident. And that same process that produced all of it also has produced me. So I am trying to be true to that. And in the context of the truth to that, to know that I am part of the process in which human consciousness and human imagination is unfolding. And that my imagination, my capacity to imagine good in my life is part of that process. I need to be able to do that myself, with my heart and with my head, be able to do that. And I also be able to acknowledge the areas where I need to grow in that capacity to do that. I need to be able to be honest with myself and do that. So being in integrity means that I am in integrity with the perfecting presence of God. And Charles didn't know about that stuff. Charles didn't have the information about the nature of our universe, about the discoveries of the age of our universe, all of those kinds of things. Charles was pretty much a kind of a fall from grace theology. That's what he had, which as human beings are the result of an error in consciousness that produced us in our physical experience. And at that time, I'm not too sure that he didn't think that we just showed up with this consciousness that we have. And in the consciousness that we have the potential to create suffering. Do we not? I mean, significant amount for our individual selves and for others. And so he thought that was an error. That was a fall in consciousness that caused that. Today, many of us are awakening to the fact that it's not a fall. What happened, what it really is those aspects are programmed into us, but they no longer work in the context of our vastly awakened imagination. So when we use some of those old ideas, when they're informed, when they're fears, when they're based on the concept of separation, when we use those old ideas and use our imagination in order to pursue them, we create significant amounts of great amounts of suffering, terrible suffering for people. And so we are beginning to say, and it's not that we're sinful, we're born sinful, we're born into a fallen state. It's that those are aspects that brought us to where we are. They're aspects of of the evolution of life that worked at earlier stages that we're now called to give up. And we do that all the time. We give up ideas all the time, you know. And I've talked about this a number of different times. How this aspect of change, we're programmed to reproduce at what age? Huh? 12, yeah, between 12 and 14 years old. We're programmed. And we almost across the board in culture now have put that off. And we're continuing to put that off because we do better if we put it off for a while. At least we think we do better. We try to do better if we put it off for a while. So there are a lot of aspects of our nature that we are called as we continue to wake up to do that. And so what I would propose to you is that living in integrity is living with the idea that I am called to grow, to spiritually grow and to unfold, and that we are called to do that together. And in the context of doing that together, to support each other in this process and to be part of the awakening of all of humanity as we continue to do that. So, spiritual transformation is practicing the perfecting presence of God, not being perfect. And not being perfect has to be okay. So sometimes we do affirmations, and you can read it in the Daily Word regularly. It says that I am the perfect expression of God. Well, and Jesus said, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. You remember, anybody remember that particular thing? That troubled me for a while, because I sensed that I was falling short to some degree or another on being perfect. What I know today, and what I believe that means today, is to be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, is to create, to unfold. The perfecting presence of God is the unfolding of this universe, of life, into new expressions, of new and more novel, wonderful expressions of a creative energy that is the foundation of the universe. And for that energy to be perfect, it needs to continually create new and more wonderful expressions of love. And so that's what it calls us, and that's what it calls us to do. I think it calls us to be in integrity, for me to know that about myself, for me to know that about you, for you to know that about me, and for us to support each other as we continue in our process of unfolding this potential that exists in all of us. And out of that, we do that in support then of what we're called to do, to our vision. It means this is what we see out here, that could really exist at some point in time, which is a world that is transformed through the growing movement of shared spiritual awakening. And then we have something to do to help bring that about. That's our mission. Our mission is to advance this movement of shared spiritual awakening. And our core values identify the way that we'll interact with each other and behave as we continue to do that. All in all, having an experience, I believe, opens a human being to the best possible experience of life that there is. I genuinely believe that the more I'm engaged in that, the better the experience of life. And out of that may come prosperity, will come prosperity. Out of that will come a sense of well-being that will show up in my health. But the sense of well-being is no matter what my physical health is, I don't identify exclusively with that. What I identify with is the truth that the presence of God, the essence of my being, is spirit, and it is never, ever sick, ever defective or lacking in anything. That's what unity has taught me. That's why I'm here, and that's why I hope you're here and we're here together.